You witness a horrible small plane crash and try to help save them. And that experience leads you to learning how to fly? We're gonna talk to that person in the hangar. Welcome to In the Hangar. I'm Christy Wong.
And I'm Dan Milliken. In the Hangar is brought to you by great sponsors like 67 Designs, the best camera, cell phone, tablet mounts that you can have for your airplane, your car, even your boat. And more about our sponsors at the end of this episode and in the description below.
Yes, Dan, today we've actually got a pretty heavy topic to discuss. We're talking about a plane crash.
Yeah, so with us is Charles Turner. Charles, this plane crash was a while back. But it changed your life in a dramatic way. And it's a different perspective of a plane crash. You weren't in the plane. Can you tell us the story? And in your background.
Sure. Prior to the event, I didn't have any aviation experience at all. I'd been in a small plane one time with a cousin of mine, and we flew across the Chesapeake Bay and back. And I don't have a lot of memory of that being anything other than fun. I mean, but it didn't really spark an interest in aviation. And I was on that particular day on a golf course. I was working in the family business. We'd bought some advertising down there, and we had some free rounds of golf, and I wanted to take friends. So we were there, and we had just teed off, and I had committed my usual slice, right. And all of a sudden we heard this motor coming from the right, and it got louder and louder and louder, and at first we thought it was a mower, but as it got louder it got higher, and all of a sudden we looked over, and in the grove of trees behind the green, all of a sudden we saw this small plane rise up through the trees.
Rise up.
Just come up into view, coming from left to right, and just rise up so you could see the windscreen and the prop. And then all of a sudden, there was a crack, and the top of one of the trees came out, and then another crack, and then the airplane inverted. The right wing flipped up vertical, and the airplane went upside down and went behind the berm behind our green and disappeared. To be honest with you, it was a kind of an anticlimactic sound. You always see these things in movies and stuff, and you're thinking there's going to be, it wasn't anything like that. It was like sounded like a fender bender. So we got in the golf carts and we raced around there, and sure enough, the airplane was upside down, and there were two people in the airplane. The guy that was on my side had been half ejected through the door, the actual window of the door, and the other person was pretty badly broken up. The seat had disconnected, and they were in the back of the airplane. And so the guy that was on my side, now the airplane is a low wing, it's upside down, he raised himself up on his elbows and said, "Please, God, get me out." So one of the guys that was with me said, "I'll go get a log. You see if you can get the door open, and we can get it open far enough, we could pull him out."
Was there fire happening? No? Okay.
Not at this point. At this point, when I went to the airplane, there was, of all things, blue fuel pouring out of the wing. And it was running down the wing, and as I got on my knees to get up above him and up to the door, I realized that there was fuel that was running down the wing. It was going on my head, down my shirt, into my shorts, and into my shoes. So I'm on my knees trying to figure out how to get the door open, while at the same time trying to figure out how to get the wing up high enough. It was sagging. So I'm trying to get the wing up high enough to get the door open far enough to pull him out.
Wow.
And one of the things I'll never forget is that one of the guys that was there, one of the other golfers, and I don't know if he was from the front, ahead of us, he was standing literally 25 feet away, And he was running around in circles, flapping his arms like a chicken, hollering, "Oh my God, this is so bad. This is so bad."
Whoa.
So I started screaming at him, "Get the F over here and help me." And he just couldn't come.
He was
Wow.
panicking. It sounds like he was in a
Totally,
full panic.
just totally unglued.
Was the engine, was it still turning or was it?
No.
Everything was dead.
Everything was dead, but everything was very hot. I remember it being just brutally hot, and the windscreen was busted out, had a big hole in it. And so I'm trying to do this, and all the while that I'm trying to get this door unlatched and the wing up, I realize that the blue fuel is starting to gather in the grass, like a swamp. So I worked at it, and for as best as I could, and then my golfing buddy came back. He had a log. It fell to pieces, and then all of a sudden he hollers, "Dude, you got to come now or you're not going to make it. Look up, look up." So I looked to the rear of the airplane, and I realized that all the way back in the tail, there's a piece of mirage that's rising from the tail that's about 10 inches wide. It's just going straight up like a ribbon into the sky. And he said, he's screaming at me to come, so I looked down at the guy. I assume that's what he was talking about. I looked down at the guy and I said, "I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry," and I took off running.
Oh, gosh.
And I got about 40 yards away. Sorry, this is still,
No, absolutely.
20 years later, I can't believe it. I got about 40 yards away, and I turned around to figure out what was going to happen. And the next thing you know, this blue ball swept up through the airplane. And the whole thing, I mean, after that, I can't even tell you, I can't even say it. But the whole thing burned in place. So I was covered in gas. I mean, my shoes, I'm sloshing gas in my shoes. And we all elected to just walk around for a while. They set off somebody called 911. They set off that alarm that's on a golf course for lightning, closed the golf course. We all walked around for a while till I could dry out enough. Heard the sirens in the distance, went back to the car and went home. And of course, immediately the nightmares started.
I mean, you saw this, you saw it happen.
You couldn't save this guy. You tried.
I know, and you know, the thing about this is it's actually in some ways, and I'll just be straight, in some ways, now that I am a pilot, it's almost worse, because now I understand how a door works.
And how part of an emergency is, crack that door.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you know what kind of airplane this was?
It was a Cherokee 140.
Oh,
That's what she flies.
And I'm going to tell you, I'll tell you something about that later on. But anyway, so I decided after 6 months of nightmares that I had to get an answer. So that my first instinct was to buy Microsoft Flight Simulator.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I decided that if I could make it do it, that maybe I could understand why it did it, and then I could get beyond it. I could never do it. 2000, Microsoft Flight Simulator, the trees are flat. You can't, there's no way to get it to do what it should, you want to know.
you were effectively trying to recreate this instance.
So that I could understand it
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
and shut it off. I mean, at least then I'd be able to
Yeah.
deal with it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I took the story I just told you, and I took it to a friend of mine who was a pilot, and he said to me, after I told him the story, he said, "You need to go to Manassas and meet with Tom Adams. He's the chief pilot at Dulles Aviation. You tell him the story. He'll tell you what happened. There's a reason for all these things." Okay, so it took me 3-4 months to get up the nerve, because I knew he would think I was nuts, to go meet him. And I went, and big, robust guy, jolly fella, tight-knit, gray hair and big bottle glasses, and he looks back at me and he says, "Charlie, I could tell you what happened, but you don't know anything about short field takeoffs or weight and balance or brake horsepower or density altitude or any of the things that went into why that happened. You need to go through ground school. You could spend $200 a month for the rest of your life and have a shrink tell you that you did everything you could do, or you hand me $275, you come sit through ground school, and at the end, you'll know, you'll understand why." So I bit and went to ground school. And I was third of the way through ground school, maybe half, going twice a week, sitting in the classroom there with a bunch of other people, not saying much to anybody, and going home when it was over. And all of a sudden, this young lady one evening, come toward the end of class, it was a summer evening, so she comes up to me and she said, "Are you Charlie Turner?" I said, "I am." She held out her hand, shook my hand, good, strong shake, and she said, "I'm Christy Baker. I'm your flight instructor. Your airplane's outside." And I'm like, "Whoa, whoa, 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 whoa. I'm not flying any airplane. Are you crazy?" And she's like, "Oh, no, Mr. Adams says you're going to fly." I'm like, "You're out of your mind. I'm not getting in one of those things."
Wow.
Really?
Was it a Cherokee?
No.
Oh, that would be really cruel.
It was a Cessna 172.
Okay.
So she said, "Come on, let's go. We're going right now. Come on." So I went. And really, in the beginning, I had no intention of flying at all. I just went, and I felt better for going because I could see I understood what the draw was. Okay, now I get it. First few flights, I get it. And then I felt safer because I had Christy with me in the airplane. So I felt like she's going to tame the beast. Something happens, I'm going to be okay, right? And we're going to, And all of a sudden, I'm taking lessons. And I'm moving knobs and turning dials and walking around an airplane. Okay, I'll do it for a while just to see what happens. And then the nightmares were still happening. And after a while of this, a few months of this, it was still obviously fresh, and I was still having a lot of problems with it. I had a really bad night. It was that guy running around in circles and the screaming and and the fire and And I decided, okay, I have a class, I got to go. Maybe what she'll do instead of flying, I'm just going to ask her, let's just go out in the practice area. I just want to fly around for a few minutes and come home and rest. I didn't sleep well, and I just. So I pre-flighted the airplane. I got in it and got it all set up. She walked out there. She got in the airplane, and I said, "Look, I had a bad night last night. Can we just go out to the practice area? I just want to go out and fly around for a few minutes just to look around, just to sort of see, something pretty, and then come home. I'll pay for it, Okay, but you got to give me a takeoff first. Give me a takeoff and landing." Okay. Taxied up, takeoff, landing.
I see where this is
It was
going.
okay.
It sounds like the used car salesman of flight training.
Yeah.
It's okay. So we taxied back, and I said, "Can we go now?" She said, "Give me another one. Just one more. Give me one more." Okay. Took off, went around. Not bad. It was okay. So then I said, I only got like 25 minutes left of my time, can we just go now? Just even just to go out to the edge of the practice area and turn around and come back. And then she hollered, go to the ramp.
I see where this is going.
Yeah.
So I said, okay. So I didn't mean to make you angry, Christy. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to make you mad. So we get up to the ramp, and of course, she jumps out, slams the door. And I'm like, are we getting out? She said, no, we're not getting out. I'm getting out. You're giving me 3 takeoffs and landings. If I call you back over here, you come over here and talk to me. And if I don't, you keep going. Mm-hmm. What? And so then she slams the door, and then she hollers at me, and lock that door. Okay. So I push the little lever down. And before I could even take my feet off the brakes, the tower at Manassas clears me to 1-6 for a takeoff. I'm on the ramp. So I do my takeoffs and landings, and I realize that A, the airplane really doesn't like to land when there's only one person in it.
Right, you floated, yeah.
The 2, there's a lot of light that comes in that right window that I'd never seen before.
Right.
Right? And 3, do you know those airplanes make crazy noises?
Oh, yeah.
When you're the only one in them?
Yeah.
They start making things. There were noises out there that I'd never heard in my entire life. Mm-hmm. I thought that was it, but I had to get the man his airplane back. It was a rental. Right? I got to get it back in one piece. So I did my thing. And then life was different.
How did you
that.
feel? How did you feel after you soloed an aircraft?
I felt good in that I had a more complete understanding of why people fly and what the joy of it is. I also felt like, which became the driver beyond that day, I wasn't going to let Christy down. I wasn't going to do it. I'm not going to do it. She wasn't going to let me fail, because I would have gone home that day and that would have been it.
Right.
I don't need to solo. I'm okay. I understand. I get it. I can go home now.
Right.
And she wasn't going to allow it.
When you did the solo, the three takeoff and landings, at any point did you think back to the Cherokee and the golf course?
I didn't have time.
Right.
I got to get to 600 feet. I got to turn left. Yep. I got to, go to 1,200 feet. Then I got to turn left, and then I got to get down, and then I've got gas, mixture, undercarriage. I got the whole thing. No, not at that point. No, and really, through private training, beyond that day, really, I'll tell you what this trauma is. You'll understand. I have it right here, sitting here with you. It's like having a piece of duct tape in the middle of your back that you can't get to. Mm. And some days you move a certain way and it hurts. And other days you don't necessarily notice it. But it never leaves. Never leaves.
That's a really good analogy.
That is a great
That's a really
analogy.
good analogy.
You just can't physically get to it. And so
doing the flight training, you thought that would be a way to get the tape off.
That was the plan.
Yeah.
Did it alleviate some of the, pressure of the tape, if you will?
Yeah. Yes and no. Yes, in that as I have gained over the years more confidence in my capacity as a pilot and more confidence in the machine, it's almost like a destiny thing. I control it myself. So I feel better that I know what, the 4 corners of the machine and the 4 corners of me.
Yeah, I totally get that. A lot of people may or may not know this about me, but I loved airplanes growing up, but I was terrified of flying. I actually started flight training to get over that fear initially. That's why I did my first discovery flights so many years ago. And then that's when I decided, I want to do this for real. but it was really just pushing myself to get through it by understanding the process.
And I'll tell you, the moment at which I really knew that I was going to make it, the moment at which I got over the hump, is I did my long solo cross country. And Christy wasn't there that day. And you don't understand. I mean, this is somebody who's saving my life every single day. She wasn't there to go over my paperwork. It was somebody else that I didn't know. But I flew from Manassas to Lynchburg, Lynchburg to Richmond, and Richmond back to Manassas. And when I left Lynchburg, headed for Richmond, I realized I just did that. I just went somewhere else by myself. And I'm headed to Richmond, which is a big airport, by myself. Maybe this is going to work. And then I left Richmond, and I was 25 miles from home. I called Manassas, because I'm getting ready to come up on Delta. As soon as I took my hand off the mic, a voice comes back over the frequency, and it says, "Welcome home, Charlie," and it's Christy.
Oh.
Oh, that's nice.
So I knew then that there was no going back at that point. She was too deeply invested. I had to try, because too many people had brought me too far at that point. So I went. And in my check ride, my private check ride, I had Velta Ben, who was a incredible DPE. She was, when I flew with her, I think she was close to 90.
Oh my gosh.
She was 4'8". She weighed about 80 pounds, but she was fascinating. She was a WASP.
Oh, wow.
She was a U.S. Air Force combat aerobatics trainer.
Wow.
22,000 flight hours. And she wanted to do my check ride. And so when we came to that moment, the first time I sat for my check ride, before I even got to my oral, there was another guy sitting at the table, and I didn't understand who he was at first. But he was a DPE that was supposed to evaluate her, evaluating me. So she started this argument with him. All my paperwork's wrong. That's not what I weigh. That's not how tall I am. My birth date's incorrect. I can't legally do this flight till you fix my
90
paperwork.
years old of smartness.
So we didn't have the first check ride. And one day beyond the 3-year anniversary of the accident to begin with, I had my private check ride with her.
Without the FAA looking
Without
over.
the FAA in the back
Oh,
seat.
wow.
See, she
I
was
see
smart.
what she did.
Yeah.
I see what she did. Okay.
And in the meantime, as it has been the case every year except for this past year, 23, I had walked out to the crash site on the anniversary every year.
Wow.
Now, the golf course ultimately folded, went back to being a farm, and in recent years, I'd been just parking on the side of the road. But it's very clear where it is. It's unmistakable because there's a different type of grass and stuff. But anyway, so I flew my check ride, and I got on the ground, taxied up, shut the airplane off, and she said, "Charles, somebody has to be honest with you, so it might as well be me." And I'm thinking,
Uh-oh.
it just failed. This is it. I'm done. But that's okay. If I
Words
fail-
you don't want to hear at the end of a check ride.
I know, but that's
Exactly.
okay because I'm okay. I did it, right? I did it. I tried. So I was prepared. She says to me, she said, I'm the one that has been sending you around to all the other instructors through your training because I wanted to make sure that Christy wasn't playing favorites. Tom and I have talked about this. I know where you came from. She said, I've been flying for 50 plus years. I have 22,000 flight hours. She said, I've had hundreds of students, but she said, I'm going to tell you something. In my life of flying, I've seen two other people like you. The first guy quit coming to school, having seen the same thing. And the second guy had a nervous breakdown the night before his check ride. So she said, as far as I'm concerned, you're the only one in my lifetime that ever actually made it.
Wow.
So she said, I'm going to fly until I'm 100, or until you come back here to get your commercial ticket from me. She said, because I want to, she said, I want to see the pilot you are on that day, not because you're going to be any better than anybody else, but she said, because you were given a gift. You've been given a piece of training that while the rest of us stand in the hangar and talk about it, you've actually seen it. So I had to keep going.
Oh, wow. So you continued on. You got your instrument, you got your commercial.
Okay, tell us about the commercial. Then did
Multi.
you
Yeah. You got your multi as well.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, good for you.
did you do the commercial with her?
Oh, yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
And her answer was, are you ready, Charles? Yes, ma'am. Where are we? She fell asleep on the way out to the practice area. It's okay. She'd done that before. So we got out there. I said, ma'am, we're 7 miles west of Culpeper Airport. We are at 5,000 feet. She said, okay, are you ready, Charles? Yes, ma'am. Okay, here's your final exam. So she disables the landing gear. She pulls the power to idle. And she says, your job is to get the gear down, find an airport, declare an emergency, simulated emergency, find that airport, and put this airplane on that runway.
Wow.
And I said, okay. And she said, but if the wheels don't hit the paint, you fail. And I'm like, so the numbers are what, 155 feet high, on the, I'm like, oh, okay. So I ended up circling the south end of Culpeper Airport for what seemed like a year. Down and down and down. So finally I looked at her and I said, am I allowed to do what I think is the right thing to do? I mean, to get this thing. She said, you're the pilot in command. You do what you want. So I slammed the rudder to the floor, turned the airplane over, and slipped it straight down. And she's up there. I'm looking out here. Got down like this, straightened the airplane out, through the lights, and onto the runway. So she looks at me, and I said, can I ask you a question, Miss Velda? I didn't hear any chirp. I thought that was a pretty good landing. I didn't. She said, yep.
You hit the paint.
She said, that's because you hit the paint.
Yeah.
She said, Charles, take me home.
Nice.
Took her home. She signed all my paperwork, took her credentials off, and handed them to Tom and retired.
Wow.
Right there.
So you were her last one?
I think,
Well, that's what she said.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
She said was going to fly until she turned 100 or did his commercial.
I have two questions for you. One, did the nightmares ever go away?
Did the tape come off your back?
the tape has not come off my back. It manifests itself now differently because the problem now is, now that I am a pilot, I'm sorry. Because now I understand where the door handle was.
Right.
Right.
Now I understand what really was going on.
Okay.
And the problem with that is, and other people have asked me, do you have any sense of guilt? Well, at the time, the answer was no. Of course not.
Right.
Well, you don't know what you don't know. But when you do know, it seems like such an easy answer at that point.
Right. And so now I have a greater sense of guilt now than I did, obviously, at that point, only because now I understand.
Yeah.
So I have you haven't
Well,
done your
I
second.
have a
Yeah,
second
so let's do your
question.
second question, then I've got one.
Did they ever find out what caused the crash?
That was my question.
Okay.
Yes, they had, the two occupants flew into a small grass strip, the flying circus. And they flew in on a very hot day. It was 90 plus degrees.
So high density altitude.
They rolled in there because apparently the student could buy his fuel cheaper.
So it was a student and an instructor? Oh, God. Oh, my gosh. That just, I'm sorry.
And that makes it worse for me because
Yeah.
then I'm sitting there trying to figure out through the years of flying with Christy. That's why when I say to you, when she left, I literally wept like a baby
Oh, I believe it.
because I was so inextricably attached to her,
Yeah.
that I because I couldn't understand why they ended up the way they ended up.
Right. Yeah.
So it didn't make sense to me. Christy would go on and fly with me through my long cross country, my instrument long cross country. And then the other guys, there were some great instructors, Diane, Andrew, Tyson, all of them that picked up after her.
Did you wind up keeping in touch with her at all through the years?
Yeah, we're friends on Facebook.
Oh, very good.
She's
Okay.
gone on now. She just got into the left seat of something the other day. As a matter of fact,
Oh,
she's
For
very
been
one of
good.
the majors.
for one of the majors.
Very good. Awesome.
And
And so you're flying now. How much flying do you do right now?
last year, I looked last night because I figured you would ask me, and last year I flew 67 hours.
Okay.
All right.
The problem for me is that flying isn't like it is for everybody else in that I have days when I want to go flying, and then I get out there and all of a sudden that tape,
Yeah.
and you're just,
I'm done. Yeah.
I just can't quite do it.
Well, and that's part of the I'm safe checklist. You look at the I'm safe and just mentally, if you're not mentally there and ready for it.
Like on his solo.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Okay, that's different. The soloing is different. I don't think you're ever ready to solo until you're right there and then.
All right. So Charles, you going through that, you have a unique perspective now on general aviation safety.
I do.
Talk about that.
I've had a lot of time to think about this, and one of the takeaways for me is I realized in life that, the windshield of the car is 30 times the surface of the rearview mirror.
Okay.
You think about it.
Yeah, okay.
And one of the problems in general aviation safety is that we spend a lot of time looking in the rearview mirror.
Okay.
But you don't look in the rearview mirror when the right engine goes out. It's ball, bank, blue line, right?
Right.
The problem is that doesn't work. You can't teach somebody to be safe by saying, see what the other guy did. What I'm trying to come to grips with is a month ago I bought a domain. It's called gumpsflying.com.
Okay.
GUMPS, Greater Understanding of Managed Pilot Safety.
Interesting.
Now, let's explain what that is because you will know. When you go to fly a Pilatus or you go to fly a 747, if something happens, they pull the data recorder, they pull the voice recorder, they figure out exactly what the plan is, they put it on a piece of paper, and it goes into your book for the flight department, for everybody that has that airplane. So that when you train, and if you want to fly a Pilatus, we're all going to flight safety. So there's only a couple of places really across the country to train, and they're all trained out of the same book. So managed pilot safety in that space is known, it's fixed. I don't know who taught you to fly. I don't know who taught you to fly. I don't know the language of half the people that are learning to fly.
Right.
So what we have is diversity in general aviation, which is working against itself.
Working against the standardization of safety.
That's
and
correct.
Communication. Right.
And the same is true not only in the instructional arena, but also in the hardware arena. How many hours do you have to have in a Cessna 172 in order to give me an IPC, if I bring you one?
How many hours do I have to have in a 172?
If I bring you an airplane, how many hours do you have to fly it so that you can give me an IPC as a...
By the book,
I think
zero.
by the book, 0. I was going
Zero.
to say insurance. That's
There
the,
might be insurance, but I think you're talking
yeah.
just as far
0
as what's
hours,
required.
right?
I think there's a handful, maybe a handful of hours. There might be something very, very small.
You just I was thinking you just have to be rated to fly that airplane. So if
Yeah,
it's,
by the FAA, it would be a class, category class.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Sure.
So I
But
could
what-
technically have never flown a 172 as a CFI. You bring it to me, and let's say I've only flown Cherokees, I could, by the book, give you an IPC without ever having flown a 172.
Okay, but
That wouldn't be wise, but I
what
could.
about my equipment?
It's the same thing.
My 182's got a 530. I mean, I've got a 500 TXI, 750, 650 XI. If you've never seen any of those things,
I can still give it. It's just not wise.
right?
Yeah, and it's not safe.
right.
So my bent in this is that I think that we need to establish some managed pilot safety on the GA side.
So record keeping, is that what you're? No.
Creators. Let's just talk about the creator space. You.
Okay.
Let's talk about Jason Shappert, Jason Miller. When you learn to land an airplane, when I learned to land an airplane, it took 3 instructors to explain it to me so I could get it right. It's because we all receive information on different frequencies. You can say something to me and I may not understand it because of the way you put it. If I go to Boston and try and learn how to fly an airplane, I'm going to be subjected to accents and mannerisms and things that, as a Virginia boy, I've never seen. So what I'm saying is, somebody said to me, and as a comment from one of the articles I wrote the other day for Airfax Journal, general aviation is as safe as riding a motorcycle.
Okay.
Really?
Interesting.
Really? Really? Is that all it is? As safe as that? And it really makes you think about whether or not there's a way to gather the creators and create a space in which we all know the top 5 most deadly things in general aviation, whatever they are, weather and base to final and all that stuff. Why not get people together and build a resource instead of where you can go look at this? You can teach it to me, but if I'm not quite certain, maybe I go see the way somebody else does it.
Yeah. It's an interesting concept. And I know that people have tried to collaborate to do that type of work. I know that there's definitely differing opinions out there about how that information should be presented.
Yeah, everybody. Yeah.
Everybody's got
That will be the struggle.
Yeah, exactly. And I think honestly that's the main struggle is just
It's diversity.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But the problem with it is if you don't have diversity in general aviation, you won't have general aviation.
Oh, trust me, I agree 100%. The problem is that I could tell Dan, oh yeah, well they could try it this way, and Dan could say, well, no, my opinion is the right opinion, and we'd get a lot of that in every space, not just aviation. But yeah,
Sure.
I don't disagree.
Well, because it sounds like it's a standardization of training, which is not a bad idea, but also more than that, I think what you're saying is the ability maybe to see the training through different perspectives so that if somebody's having trouble grasping the concept from one explanation, they can grasp the concept from somebody else's explanation, and it would be a resource in which you could get those differing perspectives
That's
on the
right.
same issue.
Right.
Okay. Well, Charles, thank you so much for coming all the way out from Virginia to tell us your incredible story.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to be able to, I'm going to need a minute to not think about this one. It was a very heavy topic, and my emotions right now are kind of like this, because there was just, wow.
I'm going to tell you one other interesting thing, and that is I have an airplane that is maintained in Warrenton. Warrenton is about 7 miles from Culpeper. And so in one instance, I drove to Culpeper, got in the airplane, and flew it the 3.5 minutes up to Warrenton for its annual. I was offered a ride back, which I took by airplane to Culpeper from my mechanic. I climbed in his airplane. We were off the ground, and I looked around and I asked, and this has been last year, I asked him, he's completely oblivious to my story. I said, "What is this?" He said, "Cherokee 140. And I'm like, "Really?" And then I'm looking around, and he's like, what are you looking for?" And I said, "I'm looking for the gas gauges." And he started laughing at me. And he said, "We're only going like 7 miles." And I'm like, "That's not why I'm looking for them. I want to make sure this sucker isn't full."
Yeah, the trauma is real.
Yeah. That's, all right. If people want to find out more, tell us that website again.
I'm working on it. It's still under construction, but it's gumpsflying.com. Greater understanding of managed pilot safety.
Okay.
And I have written an article series for Airfax Journal.
Okay.
That's out there. If they want to read the story itself as I wrote it, just go to Airfax Journal and search for the word golf.
Okay.
And I want to give just a short shout out to the guys at Smokehouse Pilots, because originally none of this would have happened without them. It's a pilot club at Leesburg Airport. Everybody's seen it on Facebook. Gabe and Adrian and the Jameses and those guys, they're incredible people. I literally flew to one of their fly-ins for barbecue, and this guy I'd never met, Gabe, sat down, and the typical question, "How'd you get into flying?"
Right. Well, that's a dangerous question with you, but yeah.
And at the end of my response, I had really put a buzzkill on the party, and the table was as quiet as a crypt. You know what I'm saying? But and those were the guys that encouraged me to write this thing to begin with that brings me here today. So I wanted to say, give those guys a shout out. So,
Oh gosh, thank you so much
you.
for coming and sharing your story. I'm
you.
so taken by your willingness to tell the story and everything all these years later, and I can tell you still carry it with you. So thank you for sharing.
And thank you guys for watching. And don't forget, this is all brought to you, this kind of content, brought to you by our sponsors. Mention 67 Designs. We also have Flying Eyes. Use our discount code, taking off all caps one word, for 10% off. Marshall Protective Services, MPSprotects.com. Z-Vision, the brightest landing and taxi lights out there. And Colton Mortgage, ColtonTakingOff.com. Clemens Insurance. Jerry has saved me. Actually, the first time I went to Jerry, he saved me over $1,000 on my insurance at ClemensInsurance.net. Links are in the description below.
Of course, we'd like to thank you, our viewers, for helping support our show as well. We're almost to 100,000.
Yeah.
We know what that means.
Yeah, and actually, by the time we air this, we may already be across the finish line.
Oh my gosh.
You may have already jumped out of a plane.
Oh my gosh. Anyway, thanks guys. Please like, subscribe, share our videos, and we'll see you all next time.
In the hangar.